you all for attending today. I'm Nicole Jarvis, Senior Manager of Programs at Cancer and Careers, and I'll be your host for today's webinar. Sorry. I'm a little forward. Just before we begin, I just want to go over a few housekeeping items related to accreditation. Today's webinar is accredited for CEUs by ANCC, NASW, the New York State Education Department State Board for Social Work, the California Board of Registered Nursing, and the Society for Human Resource Management. If you plan on receiving continuing education credit for this program from any of these accrediting bodies, please proceed with the following steps. First, you must log in individually. Participants who listen in on someone else's line will not receive credit. Second, you must complete and submit the post-test and evaluation and receive a passing grade on the post-test. Following today's session, you'll receive an email with all of this information. That email will be sent by 5 p.m. Eastern Time, Thursday, February 11th, and certificates will be emailed within 4 to 6 weeks. Also, please note that the planners and presenters for this program have not disclosed any pertinent financial relationships or conflicts of interest, and that no commercial support was provided for this program. Now, thanks in part to direct support from Genentech, HSN, and QVC, Cancer and Careers is able to offer this 7th year of Balancing Work and Cancer webinar series. This program was created to provide patients, survivors, as well as their care teams and employers with concise, targeted information around the work-related issues that arise after a cancer diagnosis. Additionally, we'd like to recognize Cancer and Careers year-round sponsors who support all of our core programming and allow us to continue providing all of our resources and services free of charge. Now, today's topic is something that many of us know is important, but can find scary and challenging to apply in both our personal and professional lives. Setting boundaries can be a really valuable way to engage in self-care at the workplace. Implementing healthy boundaries allows you to be more in control and feel more empowered. To help us explore this topic tonight, we're delighted to have Allie Schaefer. Allie is a licensed clinical social worker and has a private counseling practice in Nashville, Tennessee, providing individual and group therapy for adults navigating life transitions, coping with health challenges, and desiring to live more fully. For over 16 years, Allie has worked directly with people impacted by cancer across the cancer care continuum in various clinical settings. Prior to her current role, she was a faculty member and clinician with the Vanderbilt Ingram Cancer Center Psycho-Oncology Team and the manager of patient and family-centered care. Additional clinical social work experiences include working with at-risk youth and their families at an outdoor wilderness program and a residential psychiatric hospital. We will have a question and answer period at the end of the webinar. All questions you want answered should be entered into the Q&A box located either on the top or the bottom of your screen. Please do not ask questions for Allie in the chat box. If you are joining us via the phone today, please press *9, which will alert us of your question. But for now, I will hand it over to Allie to get us started. Allie?
Thank you so much, Nicole. I just want to acknowledge the incredible team at Cancer and Careers for their ongoing contributions to this important topic, to the intersection of work and cancer. So I am grateful to be a partner with the team and to be here tonight talking with each of you around a really important topic. So the first thing I want to do is invite you, if you can, to take a moment and think about your own personal relationship right now with boundaries at work. On a scale of 0 to 10, 0 being I have none, and 10 being I have the most rock solid boundaries that I'm really proud of and feel really good to support my professional and personal life in the ways that I want. And if you'll just put your number 0 to 10 in the chat, helps me get a sense of where are you sitting tonight and in this moment in space and time, so I can incorporate that as we go along. And let's be clear, there's no judgment for where you sit with boundaries and your own personal evaluation. Awesome, I see them rolling in and we've got a range, okay. Awesome. We have anywhere from 0 to 8 and everything in between. Great, still coming in. Perfect. And with this, thank you for participating. Again, it just helps me get a sense of where you're sitting. It sounds like some people feel really practiced and really proficient with their boundaries, and some people don't. And what I want to say is, regardless of what your rating is, there is always an opportunity to both celebrate the boundaries that you have in place and acknowledge what is working and what isn't working. And also to say, what else could change? What might feel or be different if I shifted some boundaries, even just a little bit, to create enough of a change that helps me in the experience of my own life right now. So I want to give a little bit of a background about why we're talking about this. Why are we talking about boundaries? Why are we talking about boundaries for people who have some type of history or relationship to cancer? And what I saw over and over and over again in my work with people navigating cancer was this notion of burnout, frustration, resentment, fatigue, anger, all of these things that were clear indicators that boundaries were not happening, that boundaries were not present in part of the well-being and the well-care for people navigating life and cancer. And so I said, we've got to do something differently. We've got to start to have a more proactive conversation about boundaries, to bring this into the cancer arena so that people have this as a tool for their own well-being. And so as you read some of these quotes, maybe they sound familiar, either for yourself or some of the patients that you've worked with, or the humans you might be caring for or loving who are navigating cancer. I don't know how I'm going to feel from day to day. How am I supposed to work? How do I let everyone down? I don't want to lose my job, right? People would also be so proud of the fact that they had worked without taking any time off or a break during cancer treatment or throughout their experience of cancer. And then they got to a point where they found, oh my gosh, I am so exhausted. I am so fatigued. I am so burned out. And I wish I had taken some time off. And so boundaries, wherever you are in your personal life, are a great thing to activate and to engage, to create or shift the experience that you have in the professional arena and potentially the personal arena. And we're going to talk about that more specifically from a holistic view. So with this being said, I also want to note that boundaries are not just for people who have some type of experience with cancer or history of cancer. Boundaries are for all humans, okay? So regardless of who is on the call tonight, I think that you're going to find there are things that are relevant with or without cancer. I'm going to offer and talk about boundaries as a framework for you to help look at your life, your choices, and your actions. And as Nicole said, to help empower you and to help give you a sense of control over your life, to create a meaningful experience that feels good to you and ideally will positively impact the life that you have. I'm going to offer ideas. I'm going to offer suggestions. I'm going to offer tools for you to think about something that might work. With anything I offer or with anything that I share tonight, I want to give you a whole lot of permission to take what's yours and leave what's not. Doesn't impact me personally. I just want to give you some things that I know that could be helpful. And sometimes offering multiple perspectives or multiple lenses can be really helpful for you to find what fits for you and where you can find something that works for you. So I'm going to invite you to sit with all of the conversation, to practice and play around with the tools outside of this conversation tonight. I'm not going to guarantee that all of a sudden it's going to make sense and radically change your life, but using and engaging boundaries on a consistent basis and practicing them really can help to shift the experience of your life. Now, I also am going to note that I won't be able in our conversation today to speak to every one of your unique experiences. And so I really want to invite you to personalize the things that I'm saying to the situation, to your life in a way that makes sense for you or for the people that you're caring for, that really just helps. And I also want you to make this your own, make this feel personal. Because of the time that we sit in, I'm also going to bring in a lot of current events and really talk real life and humanly, and just kind of real world about what's happening and why boundaries are even more useful and important right now where we sit. So I just want to acknowledge that we will talk, and I will specifically address current events, specifically COVID, and how boundaries can be really instrumental. I want to remind you that boundaries are not just a one-time thing. So you'll hear me say, create, implement, and maintain boundaries. And that's on purpose, because you don't necessarily just set boundaries once, but oftentimes you get to set them over and over, or you might need to tweak them and reset them. And then you also need to uphold your own boundaries. So I just want to help you understand, again, the framework that boundaries are a lifetime work, and they can be so useful that they can help you at times in your life to be ideally responsive to where you sit in each and every moment of your life, versus needing to adhere to very rigid structures that may not serve you in each moment, as you are just a dynamic human in your life. So let's get into it. I want to take a holistic view. And part of why this is important is you are not just your life, just your cancer, just your work. You as a human sit at the intersection of multiple facets of your being. And if we only look at one of those facets, we both miss information that is incredibly important to understand the influences that are contributing to the experience of your life. And we also miss opportunities to look at solutions, to look at what we can shift, tweak, change, manipulate to create a different experience for all those facets of you. And so I think it's really important and helpful to take a holistic view that there are going to be some things that you can't change in your life. And so me saying, yay, just use boundaries, apply that, might feel really inauthentic and disingenuous, because there are going to be some things that you cannot control. But as we talk through this tonight, what you might notice, and I hope you'll see, is that as we manipulate each of these pieces to our benefit, we can shift the whole experience. And when one part feels hard, we can look to the other pieces of who we are and what's influencing us to see how we might shift it. And that might create the intended outcome we need in that other area that feels stuck or hard. So we're going to be working with that holistic view. And the holistic view helps to ideally have a holistic response. So when we influence and change one part of it, we are also going to change the other parts of it. And I like that. It's a little less work, more bang for the buck, if you will. So my haiku, and I appreciate someone who commented in the chat that they'd liked the haiku. Thank you. So what I will say to you, a little bit of truth. You can't do it all. You get to choose what you do. So please choose wisely. Choose wisely. Boundaries are going to help you respond, not react. How many people feel like they're sitting in space and time in their life where they're doing a lot of reaction? Probably a lot of you right now. And so boundaries are going to help to create some space for you to gain some perspective, to see what's truly going on, so that you can make choices that feel in alignment with who you are and what you need at this moment right now. And that's what we're going to do today. So I want to debunk a little bit of myth too that feels important, is that boundaries are not about shifting someone else's behavior. They are about taking care of yourself and your needs first. Okay, so a lot of people have this impression that, oh, I'm going to set a boundary. So, my boss Joey or my coworker Jane stops doing that. It's kind of an indirect way. Boundaries are really about you, for you. Other people's behavior might shift over time, because of the boundaries that you set. But that is not the goal of boundaries, okay? So we're gonna just flip it to help you be in the most choice, which can also equal feeling like some of the most control in your life. Why are boundaries so important? Here is laid out real clear. The benefits of clear and healthy boundaries at work. It gives definition to time, roles, responsibilities, and expectations, which sets everybody up to work, or ideally sets everybody up to work efficiently, securely, and sustainably. And isn't that what we're looking for? Efficiency, security, and sustainability, right? And so now you can see again, boundaries in their dynamic ability to be shifted, changed in response to what you need in any given moment. Again, responds in kind so that you're working efficiently or securely or sustainably based on where you sit. Digging a little bit more deeply into these benefits, right? So as I'm sitting here trying to help you understand how boundaries can be so helpful and useful, I want to really outline it, really to highlight it in more detail. And again, here's another part where you're going to see, hey, Allie, boundaries and cancer are a lot of the same things that we need to see boundaries in humans. Yeah, but again, boundaries is one more tool that helps you have a comprehensive personal care plan, that helps you feel in control, that helps you feel empowered. And what we see and know all too well is cancer. The experience of cancer often feels like a loss of control, unknown timelines, insecurity, uncertainty. And so boundaries helps to give you some of that you might lose through a cancer diagnosis. It can help you manage your time and energy. It can help to reduce burnout. A lot of people are really sitting smack dab in the middle of burnout right now for so many different reasons. We've been navigating this current experience of COVID for a long time right now. Our systems have been navigating, adapting, adjusting, acclimating, and it's really hard. And so we need some tools to help us keep moving forward, to help us keep innovating and creating so that we can stay engaged in our life in a meaningful way that feels good. Boundaries help to teach people how you want to be treated, what is okay and what is not okay. It can reduce conflict and role task or duplication, right? Not everybody needs to be overworking, so boundaries can help real clear. You having boundaries can model and invite your coworkers or your colleagues or other people in your life to begin to implement and maintain their own boundaries. Boundaries can also, as stated before, create feelings of safety or security for others because they know what's clear. This other part helps you know when you've achieved a goal or completed a task. This is really important. We all want endpoints. We want to know when it's enough, when we have completed the task. And so boundaries can really help to give you that end point, that stopping point that tells you or tells somebody else it's enough, right? So that we don't overwork, we don't burn out, we don't keep going because we're just not sure. So if boundaries are so awesome, let's also look at it from another view, right? So another perspective that you might need to hear to really make it make sense for you. Unclear and unhealthy boundaries are actually more work and a greater energy drain because individuals involved are trying to figure out the width and depth of their work zone, right? It's just messy. This image says it all, that's what boundaries can look like. And so you're not really sure what you're doing, who's doing what. There's not good communication. There's not good boundaries. And over time, unclear and unhealthy boundaries have a high cost. And the high cost is often you and your health and well-being, whether it's your emotional health, your physical health, your mental health, your financial health, your spiritual health. There's a great cost, but it doesn't have to be that way. So digging a little more deeply into the unclear and unhealthy boundaries at work, with less time and energy and resources to take care of yourself. If you're overworking or if you don't know when to stop, that's just going to drain you. You may not be able to be as present and attentive to the things that are important to you, both inside and outside of the work arena. Lack of boundaries or lack of healthy boundaries leads to burnout, exhaustion, fatigue, resentment. And if in this moment you're going, oh, I'm feeling some of those things, Allie, then here's a real invitation to say, where might some boundaries help me to recharge and take better care of myself, because it's what this moment calls for. Ignoring the signs of burnout, exhaustion, or unhealthy boundaries doesn't get better. It really does invite you to take action. And the sooner that you can take action on both a proactive as well as a reactive way, so when you notice that things are already in place, it really sets you up to have the things that you need and to be who you want to be in your life. There's a potential for conflict, miscommunication, misunderstanding, job insecurity. How do I know what's truly mine, right? How do, when I go for my job evaluation, I have a clear sense of what I'm being evaluated on? Without clear boundaries, it's really hard. It's kind of that proverbial throwing spaghetti at the wall and seeing what sticks. That's not a great way. That's not a great setup for work. So if boundaries are so awesome, right? If I'm doing a good job and really clearly communicating why boundaries are so helpful, then you might be wondering, what's getting in the way of people setting boundaries? Well, there's some pretty clear reasons. Sometimes people have never been taught, modeled, or learned how to have healthy boundaries, right? That the families they grew up in or the work culture that they're in doesn't set the tone of boundaries. And so they don't know what healthy boundaries look like, or that boundaries are useful and important. Shoulds, the should monster and the should gremlin, all these shoulds. I should know how to do this. I shouldn't need to ask for help. I shouldn't have any needs. I shouldn't set boundaries. Well, that person doesn't need to do it, so I shouldn't need to do it. Shoulds, external obligations and indicators that are driving you. And instead, we want to be going from internal. What's happening inside of you? What do you need? And how can you support yourself? There's a lot of fear that comes up around setting boundaries. And this is one I see a lot with people navigating cancer, that because of maybe time off that they've had to take, or because of their identity as someone navigating cancer, they feel a lot of fear about how they might be seen in the work arena, about their competency, or about what their quality of work might be, or about their security of keeping a job. And so they're afraid of losing their job. They're afraid of creating conflict. They're afraid of retaliation by other coworkers or colleagues if they set boundaries. And they're afraid of other people's reactions or responses. There's also a lot of personal motivation. And I invite you to think about, if you're having trouble with boundaries or with certain boundaries, what might be getting in your way? What's your motivation? Is it, I really want people to like me, and boundaries feel like they create conflict, or someone might not like me speaking up for myself? Is it a fear of disappointing people, or having what you might perceive as difficult conversations? Do you have a tendency to feel or be overly responsible for other people? And setting boundaries clearly puts you in the scope of your own self. And that might feel weird for someone who's used to taking care of other people. It can also be hard if you feel like boundaries equal admitting you can't do something. Again, boundaries is around what I will do and what I won't do. It's not saying I can't do something. It's simply saying, in this moment, I don't want to do this. or this doesn't work for me right now, or this isn't good for me, or I can't do this, but I can do this, right? So there's some different language, but I get it. I get that there's a lot of things that come up around boundaries. And so we're gonna help give you some tools to feel more confident and more equipped to navigating whatever your fears or personal barriers to setting boundaries are. Here are some things that might be helpful for you just to think about what's getting in your way, right? If you're someone, regardless of whether you're sitting at a 0 tonight or an 8, there might be some things that you can work on or strengthen with some clarity. Am I using work or a lack of boundaries to avoid feeling something or dealing with something in my life? Right? That's a real one for many people. And is my lack of boundaries really helping me to keep things the same so that I can create or maintain a sense of normalcy while navigating cancer? If I don't change things, I don't have to acknowledge what's real and true, that things have changed, that I'm dealing with cancer, that I'm having to take time off, that my capacity to do work is different. Am I also not wanting to insert boundaries because of what I'm trying to make up for how cancer might be impacting my work or my colleagues? And am I overworking, right? Am I trying to get people to stop focusing on the cancer by overworking, overdoing, over responsibility? Or is there something else that I need to be aware of that's preventing me from setting boundaries? So these might be some questions that you want to spend some time outside of our conversations tonight thinking about what's getting in my way. And only you know the answers. And so it's helpful to think about it with curiosity and without judgment. So it keeps you open to receiving information, which helps you then create support for yourself as well as identify solutions. And when we sit in judgment, it's a lot harder to come up with useful, healthy strategies to address some of these barriers. Boundaries can help you do a lot of things. So if you're sitting in the place that you're scared of boundaries or you've got some things getting in your way, I want to remind you of what boundaries can actually help you to do. They can help you keep working through your life sustainably. They can help you return to work if you've been off work for any period of time, ideally without burning out, which is the goal. They can help you establish healthy, sustainable work patterns, workloads, and behaviors that are part of a healthy living and comprehensive care plan. And again, this is where I want to remind you of that notion that boundaries are this dynamic and flexible, adaptive, responsive tool that you can use to meet your life and yourself exactly where you are. So what you need today and your boundaries that might be useful and supportive to you today might be really different than what you need in a year or what you needed a year ago. And that's why it's so critical. I cannot solve the world situation right now. Believe me, if I could, I would. What I can offer is boundaries as a way to help you create space and some peace in your life to take care of yourself differently, to refill your well, to rest, to navigate, to problem solve, to take care of the things that matter to you. Boundaries can also help you feel a sense of control and normalcy. They let in what you don't, or they let in what you want and they keep out what you don't want, right? So you can sometimes think of boundaries as a fence, but it's a fence of your choosing and your own creation that you can keep adjusting as needed. And I hope in this, one of these resonates for you about why boundaries might be helpful. Because sometimes you might be more inclined to do a scary thing like insert a boundary if you're really connected and clear about why. Why are you going to do this? What might you benefit? What do you hope to benefit? So a little more of the good news about boundaries. Everybody can learn how to implement boundaries and maintain them, even you. Upholding a boundary is prioritizing yourself and reinforcing the belief that you and your needs matter. I'm going to say that again. You and your needs matter. And I get that in today's world with a lot of chatter, it can feel like you and your needs don't matter, and they do. And you are in control of your choices of valuing and validating your own needs. And you can do that through boundaries. Boundaries gets easier over time. And people actually may respond to the boundaries that you try to set better than you expect. And also, other people's responses to your boundaries are not the thing that means you're doing something right or wrong, right? It's about how you feel. All right. So I've talked about the benefits of boundaries, the costs of unhealthy boundaries, and now I want to give you some tools and a step-by-step process to really evaluate where you might be able to identify some places that you need some boundaries. But first, I want to start with possibility, with this notion. What could change and how could I feel if I created some different boundaries? And I want to invite you to write in the chat just one quick phrase. What might change or how might you feel if you created boundaries in your life right now? Peace. Oh, that's a good one. Yes. Anybody else? What could change? Less worried. I'd sleep better. A sense of calm, relief. Yes. And aren't these experiences that you want for yourself? So it doesn't have to be a mystery. Instead, it could be an amazing experience. You want to have control. You want to be more productive at work and peace, less tension and sense of obligation. Disconnection from some coworkers, less pressure. I'd get personal things done at home. Yeah. Empowered, feel more in control and less overwhelmed, better work-life balance. I started my own business as a result of creating boundaries. Awesome. Yes. Less drama. Okay. So this group is on board and really connected to some things that could make meaningful difference in their life. There's a reason for boundaries. And so keep connected to what might change. More self-worth. Yes. Less fear. Absolutely. This helps you do some of the uncomfortable work of change. Less chaos. Absolutely. Right? Make it personal. This is not about what could change or how could it feel if I did it, right? This is personal, not a martyr. Yes. Thank you. Thank you for the participation. Thank you for the honesty of how this could help. So first, we're going to start with the basics, okay? And again, I'm going to run you through these steps. You don't necessarily need to do them in real time. We might not have enough time or space for you to do that, but you have the slides and I invite you to do this on your own time. Really spend some time with it. And also, if it feels overwhelming and intimidating, do the steps that feel good and most helpful to create some boundaries. You don't have to do every step. You can also You don't have to dig deep. If there are things right on the surface that just pop up as you ask yourself these questions, take that easy pass, no problem, right? So first, we're going to start with you, again, personally answering, what are 3 things that are important to me? You want to know some of the things that are rolling around in your head and heart about what's important to you. So it might be doing a good job at work, quality time with my family and my health. And then you're going to look at what are the non-negotiables that I need to show up at work. And I'm going to add to show up fully and at my best at work, whatever that means on any given day. Okay. So some of those non-negotiables for me, sleep. I need a certain amount of sleep or it's not always pretty. I need a certain amount of physical movement, moving my body that really helps me show up fully. And also, I need energy. Those are some non-negotiables, okay? Step 2, now we're going to be looking an honest look at work. And these are a lot of questions. And again, take a quick pass. Some are going to be helpful. Some just are going to feel confusing or not necessary. But starting to look at, how do I feel at work right now? Do I want to feel differently at work than I do? And if so, I want to feel peaceful, less chaotic, more self-worth, less drama, right? You can add in what you put into the chat. What is my current capacity? This is really important because this factors into what you can do on any given day or in any given moment. Is what is your capacity? And your capacity is likely and does change. So expecting yourself to have the same capacity every day and every moment is setting yourself up for overworking and overstress and probably a lot of failure and just not great outcome. So being clear and honest about your capacity, little, a lot, not much, really helpful, because then you know what you can work within. Also want to know what's going well, feeling good at work, what's not going well, not feeling good. What do I need more of and less of at work? What are my job tasks? What is expected of me? And what are the things at work I have control over and can change or influence? That's really important, because I know some of what might be coming up for you is, okay, Allie, there's nothing at work I can change. I have a boss that tells me when I need to be there, what I need to do. But that's why I want to turn your attention to the space that might be created when you look at the things that you actually have control and influence over, which is quite a bit. It might feel small in comparison to the things that you can't control, but it's there. And then that's also why we look at the 3 different circles, life, work, and cancer, to see if there's not a lot at work you feel like you can influence or control. We're going to look to the life and the cancer piece to see where we might create, again, a little bit of momentum, a little bit of space and wiggle room that shifts things just enough to feel differently. Step 3, honest look at your boundaries at work. Right? So we're going to say what's working well, what's not working well. Where do some boundaries need to be adjusted? Right? Is it around workload? Is it around how long I'm working? Is it around who I'm talking to at work? Is it around my communication response time at work? So there's a lot of things that you can see that are within your control. And then what boundaries are missing? Oh, I work all the time. I'm never not available. Well, that might be some good information. Again, curiosity, not judgment. So then we're going to do the same thing with life and say, again, evaluating all these different questions in life. Because remember, work, life, cancer, they all intersect, they are interconnected, they are interrelated, and they all influence each other. So if we only looked at one thing, we'd be missing. Well, there's a lot going on in life right now that's really impacting your capacity, how you're feeling, what you feel present and able to do. And that matters. So looking at these different questions and just answering, again, honestly and for yourself to get a sense of what's going on. And I also want to note that you might have a different desired experience at work and at life, and that's okay. So your answers might be the same or they might be different about what you want to feel in the different arenas. Looking at the different boundaries that you have in life. What needs to be adjusted? What's missing? And you may not have answers to all of these questions, and that's okay. Where you sit right now might be some things are more clear and more obvious. And with time, as you develop your relationship to boundaries, you might get more information. And then we're going to take an honest look at cancer, right? Wherever you sit in relationship to cancer, cancer diagnosis, what's the current treatment regimen, the routine, or the medical status? What are the needs that I have, right, related to cancer? And what's my current capacity? What are the cancer-related things I have control over and can change or influence? And if you need more information about cancer, you can go back on step 2 and 4 and ask some of those same questions to help generate data and information. More data isn't always more helpful, but sometimes when you're really trying to unearth what is there, and also when you feel like you can't change anything or don't have any control, sometimes to really illuminate and illustrate what's present could be helpful then to generate solutions. And now in this last step, we're going to put it all together. Okay. So you've got your values and your non-negotiables. You're going to add it to all the information that you gained around work, all the information that you gained around life, the information that you gained around where cancer sits and what it is needing in your life right now. And then you're also going to combine it with the things that you can control and influence. And that's where you're going to identify the boundaries. And it doesn't mean you have to put all of this, it doesn't mean tomorrow you have to implement boundaries at work, life, and cancer. Like that might feel too much. And maybe what's doable is one boundary at a time, one boundary in the work arena, and then get real comfortable and confident with that. And then adding another one on. You also, if you go slowly, it's sustainable, but it also gives you time to stop and evaluate in the experiment that is boundaries. Is this working? Does this have the desired effect and impact? Or do I need or want something different around boundaries, right? So a lot of times boundaries start off as a hypothesis. I think if I stop work at 5 every day, I will feel better and less burned out. And then once you have a hypothesis, you test it out. Is that true? You might find stopping work at 5 o'clock is really helpful, and it's not as helpful as I thought it would be. And then you can say, okay, I want to keep the 5 o'clock boundary, but I also need to add something else in there to help shift my life experience. Okay. So again, it's almost like we're just manipulating and maneuvering all these different things in this grand experiment to try to help you feel differently and better in your own life. I wanted to give you some questions to consider. So as we're looking at those honest looks of all those different parts of your life and parts of yourself, sometimes also you need a little bit of help about where you might be able to create some boundaries. Sometimes thinking about, does this task that I do at work or at home need to be done? Does it need to be done by me? And sometimes that can bring up a little bit of ego as well as maybe a little bit of insecurity. Oh gosh, if I don't do this, someone else might do this instead, and then I might lose my job, right? But also it might create some real space and clarity if you can honestly say, this actually doesn't need to be done by me, and there's somebody else that I could have to do this. Or yes, it needs to be done by me, and it doesn't need to be done by me today. It can actually be done by me by the end of the month, right? So you can really kind of, again, create some space with this investigation and exploration. You can also look at how might technology support some boundaries, right? There's a lot of programs these days that help you multitask, schedule your day, also lock you out of social media when you've had too much scrolling time, right? All those things could actually be really helpful to support your needs and your boundaries. It is really good to notice who are the people or the situations that I seem to have an easier time implementing or holding my boundaries with. And who are the people or the situations that seems to be really, really hard with. That's good information, right? We also want you to recognize what are you doing well that you want to continue? So this is not all about let's look for what's not going well. We want to build on that healthy foundation. And I imagine everyone on this call, even the people who said they're at a 0 right now, you're probably doing more well than you realize. And zooming out of the situation might help you to see that. So again, just pointing out this picture, all of these things are connected. They are all influenced by one another. They are intersected with each other. And so if you have a hard time implementing some boundaries in life, or if you notice that where you sit with cancer is that cancer is taking up a lot of your space, energy, and time right now, then you can look to life and work to see how could you adjust that for your own benefit and well-being. You can also start with what feels easiest. So if you don't feel ready to tackle the hard boundary or the hard issue that's creating a lot of distress, start with something that feels a bit easier and more accessible. And then as you build momentum and confidence, you may feel more inclined to do the harder one. If you need additional thoughts around these boundaries, right? Looking at the arena related to work and cancer, what information are you going to share? What's okay to talk about? What's not okay to talk about? What might you disclose to future employers or colleagues? And then also on the right side, thinking about what are some of the things that you could shift or change that you really do have control over? How fast you respond to someone's email or text or phone call? What are the things that you're doing outside of work that might help you? You actually have a lot more opportunity to influence in your life than you may have been realizing. Here's another way to look at it. So as I said at the beginning, I wanted to offer you multiple frameworks because one might jive a little better than the other. And so this is a great way to look at it from the artist and author Amber Ray. And it breaks it out into I value, so I need, and will honor by. And so you may practice and play around with how to use this lens for yourself. One more tool. So once you've got some boundaries in place, or you have some ideas about some boundaries that you want to experiment with, then you can run them through this question to see, is this boundary supporting your values and priorities? Is it reflecting my current capacity? Is this boundary clear? Is there anything else I need to communicate in this boundary? Is this language or boundary professional? And is there anything else I need to be ready to insert or assert this boundary? This is important to acknowledge that your boundaries are going to change over time based on any number of different things. And so you can let it. What you need today is not necessarily and likely not what you're going to need in the future. You will likely see threads of the same boundaries over time. But again, because boundaries are created by you, driven by you, you can flex them in and out as needed to really be most supportive and adaptive to your own life. So some reminders and a pep talk. Okay. Just be willing to start somewhere. We've gone through a lot of information that we've kind of unearthed a ton of stuff, and it can feel overwhelming where to start or what's the best place to start, Allie. And what I want to remind you is sometimes it's literally just about starting somewhere to create the momentum, to create the experience, and to gather data about what really feels good and what's working for you. It's really important to acknowledge that if you've not been inserting particular boundaries, when you start to do that at work or at home or in your relationships, there might be some pushbacks, and that's to be expected. Pushbacks don't mean you're doing something wrong. It's likely just the result of you've made a change, and people don't always like change. And so their natural response, whether they're cognizant or not, is going to be to do something that helps get you back in that same pattern that they're used to working with. No is a complete sentence. What you add after no is entirely your choosing. A lot of people don't understand that they are not entitled or obligated for information or to have to give information. You might experience some feelings as you begin to set boundaries in your life. This is totally normal. If you've not been setting certain boundaries because you're trying to protect yourself against certain experiences or feelings, when you start to set those boundaries, you may start to notice some feelings coming up. For example, if you start to say, I'm leaving at 5 o'clock every day, and the chatter in your mind is, wow, I'm really lazy because I stopped work at 5 o'clock. Then the work in that moment is to take care of yourself and to rewrite that narrative around what it means to end work at 5 o'clock and why you're doing it for you. So this is layers upon layers. That's why boundary work is so much fun and is lifetime work. It's not just a one-day thing. Be compassionate with yourself. Oh my gosh. If nothing else, be compassionate as you try boundaries, as you are successful with boundaries, as you experience new feelings related to boundaries. Be compassionate with yourself as you try, as you fail, and as you succeed, that it's all information for you. So that was a really kind of hard switch. Let me see if I can, go back. Okay, hang on. Previous, hang on, here we go. So that was a little bit of a hard switch into, it just, as I said at the beginning, feels important to acknowledge the situation that we sit in. And so talking about work and boundaries in COVID, right? You may have done a fantastic job. You may be doing a fantastic job setting up boundaries in your life as it relates to all the things that are co-occurring right now. And I just want to remind you that as we have been going for a long time at this, you very well likely need some new boundaries, some new routines, some new practices to help you feel good and be well in your own life. And so I just want to invite you to take a look again about the things that are happening in your life and see what can you do to work within your bandwidth, to refill your personal energy supply, and keep showing up for the things that matter to you. Lowering expectations of self and others can be really important right now. So it felt useful and important to talk about some of the things that are still at play, that still need to be evaluated, assessed, and negotiated for your own well-being. Final wrap up is just a reminder of what we've talked about, that boundaries may involve having difficult conversations, feeling discomfort, experiencing new emotions. Oh my gosh, I felt such freedom when I set that boundary, right? Oh my gosh, I feel like me now that I'm creating time in my life, now that I'm teaching people, this is what is okay, what is not okay, how I want to be treated, and I'm starting to value myself in a different way. Boundaries might involve improved health, well-being, and quality of life, which isn't that the goal? Isn't that what we're all working for? And isn't that oftentimes what gets shifted, changed, or at risk when we're navigating cancer? And so boundaries is a tool that you have at your disposal right now that you can begin to use to create a meaningful difference in your life. So with that, I'm going to pause and we're going to do some questions.
Great. Thank you so much, Allie. That was, I know, a lot of really useful information. I was taking notes the whole time as well, because I think everybody struggles a little bit with boundaries. Really quickly, before we get into the Q&A, I just want to point out that we have a number of free events that are coming up over the next few months. We have listed here a few of our Balancing Work and Cancer webinars that we have coming up. A lot of them are focused on the job search, but have a lot of really great information, whether you're looking now or you plan to in the future. We also have our virtual Midwest conference, which is taking place on March 26th. Again, as with everything, will be virtual this year. We hope you can join us. Room is still available. And then we also are going to be holding our national conference virtually as well. And this will be in June, not in New York City, that should say online. And my contact information is in the bottom if you have any questions regarding anything that we're talking about here. So now I will open up for questions. I'm just going to leave the CEU requirements slide up just in case anybody didn't get the information at the beginning. But for now, as I mentioned, we will take a look at the Q&A box if anybody has any questions that they've submitted there. If you are on the phone, as a reminder, *9 will let us know that you have a question. So I do see one question from Arona, and she asked, what do you mean by the pause button?
Yes, so the pause button is something that you can utilize to create a little bit of space between needing to answer someone's ask of you or of something that you might need to do. So instead of immediately reacting, you can, press the figurative pause button that just creates a little bit of space and time between the ask of someone or the need to respond so that you can really think about, is this something I want to do? Is this something I can do right now? And it just helps to create space for you to respond versus react.
Yeah, absolutely. I know sometimes it can be easy to just respond with your immediate emotions, which may not be the most appropriate sometimes. So it's definitely a good idea to take a breath and think about what you're going to say. Yeah. We have another question. What programs or apps do you suggest that would be helpful for boundaries?
I know there are a lot of articles that people have written. I think people talk about boundaries on podcasts all the time. I think there are a lot of coaches and therapists and career coaches who are doing talks about boundaries and programs about boundaries. I don't know if there are specific apps that are around generating boundaries. That would be an interesting question, and I'll have to do a little bit of digging on that. But you could certainly just in podcast type in boundaries or in Google type in boundaries and see if there's anything in addition that comes up. I think it's certainly a hot topic right now, so you will likely find a lot of information.
Mm-hmm. I would also, speaking to this presentation, go back on some of these slides and take a look at, some of the sort of interactive activities that we've done throughout this presentation that can be really helpful. Certain questions to ask yourself, and even just the idea of this pause button and how you can work that into your responses and setting up those boundaries that are sometimes more challenging. I do see something in the chat from Laura, who just mentioned that she started her own business, except she's finding it hard to draw a line between work and home life, which I'm sure resonates with a lot of people right now. On top of what you've mentioned throughout, do you have any other suggestions for how to have healthy boundaries between work and home when both are in the same place?
Yeah, so this is so common. Let me just say that first, Laura, that as someone who I am a business owner, and it has taken time to really understand when and how I want to be in business mode and when and how I want to be in non-business mode, and also understanding and appreciating the real benefit and need for a division of that. That if I'm always in business mode at the same time that I'm always in life mode, that's a setup for burnout. So I've really had to look at, when am I in business, whether that's setting up direct work hours, if I work between this time and this time, or I'm available of life between this time and this time. And once I had a real clear awareness of what was when, then I could also start to play around with a little bit of fluidity between the two. But it is important to create some division of those facets of self in the ways that you can, so that you can create some rest, so that you can be present. And that so when you're in life, you can be in life. And when you're in business, you can be in business. I also think that depending where you're at with your business, it's not uncommon for new business owners to be and need to be more engaged and involved in their business to some degree that they might not need to be as they become more skilled or proficient in the systems and setup of their business. So I think also be compassionate with yourself if you're finding that you're needing to work a lot or needing to be available because that's what the phase of business you're in really requires. But as much as you prioritize the business or the life, I want you to do the same for the other. So both are important. And what I've learned from me is if I'm not taking care of myself and giving myself life, then I can't and don't show up to the business in the same way that I need to. And actually, when I harmonize both in really good ways and prioritize my own well-being through boundaries and self-care and various activities, it actually makes life better and work better. So being willing to play around with those things and again, experiment with some of those lines to say, does that work?
Yeah, absolutely. Are you open to taking one more question, Allie?
Yeah.
Great. So it looks like we have one from Mary. Mary said, I got thrown under the bus today. My coworker was trying to get me in a Zoom meeting with others to commit to future projects. I didn't set boundaries early, and now in my second year of ongoing treatment surgeries, how do I clear this up and say I can't commit and get understanding without being nasty when the pressure continues?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I see there's the additional part. She continued to pressure me in the meeting. So she's real invested in getting some answers for you. And you can say something with kindness and clarity of, I'm not in a position to commit to that right now. I hear what you're asking of me and I'll keep considering it. And at this time, I'm not able to commit to anything beyond what's on my plate. And so you don't even necessarily in your response have to acknowledge what you did or didn't do last year or what you've previously done. You can be fully in the present moment and just say, I can't commit to that right now. Thank you so much. And I'll keep it on my radar for consideration. And in that response, it might feel weird, or you might hear that I really didn't say a whole lot. I didn't give a whole lot of reason because there's not a lot of reason or justification or explanation needed beyond I can't commit to that right now. And if that coworker keeps pressuring you and wanting an answer, you get to be that broken record. I can't commit to that right now. I hear it's really important to you. I can't commit to that right now. And just pause.
Yeah, absolutely. And I thought about this when you were presenting as well, just about this feeling of obligation that a lot of cancer patients and survivors feel about sharing a lot of information about themselves. And you're totally right. There is no obligation. You can give a very straightforward response without needing to, go too much into detail. It's not their business. All they need to know is that you are unavailable to do that right now. And so I think that's really important for a lot of patients and survivors to remember in the disclosure conversation that, what you choose to share is your decision. So, okay, we have one more question. That's okay with you, Allie?
Yeah.
This one is, how can I set boundaries with my micromanaging manager in a respectful and professional manner?
Yeah. Oh, yes. The micromanaging manager. That's a special quality, a special personality. So, I think it really comes down to you can be kind and clear. Like boundaries are not a dirty word, and you can convey what is okay, what is not okay, what you can do, what you can't do in a very kind, clear, and professional manner. And see how that works, whatever it is that you're wanting to communicate, concise, clarity, and see how that works. If they're not receiving it well, then it might be necessary to have a follow-up conversation using things like, I feel really frustrated when you are nitpicking over my schedule, and it would be helpful if we could have some conversation around that. right? So you can also, if you need to, open up that conversation if it feels safe and if you have that kind of working relationship with your boss, to really just kind of dig into what's going on here, right? Is there something I'm not aware of? Because this is kind of what I'm seeing from my point of view. But anything you say, any boundary that you communicate can absolutely be done in a clear, concise, and professional manner that is kind. And if you're unsure about it, that's one of those times where maybe you want to role play with a colleague or a friend to just practice with the language and say, how does that come across to you? And give you that confidence to have that live time conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. Not an easy conversation to have. So practicing can really alleviate some of the stress and pressure around that. So I do want to just be mindful of the time. I know this is an evening webinar, so I'm going to end it here. I really hope that you guys all found this really valuable, and we really appreciate your feedback. So as I mentioned, we will be sending out an evaluation and post-test. So if you could take the time to just fill out the evaluation, your feedback really helps us in shaping future calls, but also in continuing to receive funding for these programs. If we were unable to get to your question during tonight's call, definitely shoot us an email at cancerandcareers@cew.org, and we'll be sure to get the answers for you. Thank you so much, Ali, for all of your insights and your advice. And thank you all for attending tonight. Have a wonderful rest of your evening. Bye.